Welcome to the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. I'm your host, Robin L. Owens, PhD, and this is where we dive in each week to give advice, tools, and tips for high-achieving, purpose-minded women who've written nonfiction books and want to amplify their message beyond the book. I'm a college professor, and when I'm not doing that, I am speaking, coaching, mentoring, and teaching high-achieving women who have written books how to use their books to make a bigger difference, have more impact, and purpose. Okay, let's dive in. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. So glad you're here and listening to the podcast. I appreciate you so much. And you've helped the podcast be ranked in the top 10% according to Listen Notes. And so I really want to thank you for that. All right. And today I'm talking with Susan MacKenty Brady, and she is a relationship expert, leadership well-being coach, author, and speaker. She educates leaders and executives globally on fostering self-awareness for optimal leadership. She advises executive teams on how to work together effectively and create inclusion and gender parity in organizations. And she is the author of 4 books. Her most recent book, Arrive and Thrive, 7 Impactful Practices for Women Navigating Leadership, debuted last year and landed on the bestseller list in the Wall Street Journal, Publishers Weekly, and USA Today. Susan is the chair for Women in Leadership at Simmons University and the first chief executive officer of the Simmons University Institute for Inclusive Leadership. And she resides in the Boston area and is the proud mom of 2 awesome daughters and 2 rambunctious Portuguese water dogs. Welcome, Susan MacKenty Brady.
Hi, Robin. Thank you for having me.
It's a joy to have you here and a delight. And I'm so glad that we get this time to have this conversation.
Me too.
All right, so let's just jump right in. You heard me read your bio as an introduction, a bit of your bio, but why don't you tell us in your own words, whatever you want to tell us first about you and then your work?
Well, you kind of covered it. I'd say more about me and my work. I'm sort of an accidental expert in women's leadership. And, I woke up woman, and I have been a student and teacher of leadership for most of my life. And the two came together somehow. I think I was blind myself or unaware to any limitations that I had because I was a woman. I didn't think I didn't think I had any. I was raised in a household where I was told I could be anything I wanted to be. And then, I saw some stuff, I experienced some things that didn't seem quite right. But boy, I was steadfast on thinking it, might makes right. And I just have to work harder. And so my journey is both a professional one and a personal one as a woman leader and as an author. And I talk about my journey openly with the hope that it helps and inspires others. So, there's a lot about my life that the listening and reading audience could find because I've been open. Probably the thing I'm proud about most is being a mom, having the honor of being a mother to 2 young women and watching them mature and grow and hopefully thrive.
Yes, that's awesome. And we can hear the joy and pride in your voice as you talk about them. That's wonderful. Yeah, that's wonderful. All right, so let's talk about, you said you were taught at a young age you can do whatever you want and your journey kind of brought you here. So tell us kind of what some of the milestones that brought you to this work today.
Well, I would say I probably the most notable milestone that brought me to this work is falling into a job that was in the leadership development arena for a consulting company called Linkage, and that was almost straight out of graduate school. And I was hired in to develop a global institute for leadership development, and the person who I had the opportunity to partner with on that project was the great and late Warren Bennis, who wrote the seminal work on leadership, on becoming a leader. And immediately was thrust into meeting and learning from some of the greatest minds on leadership of our time. And though my job was to put on a large event and market and sell and design the program for it and such, I always felt like I was kind of secretly geeking out on the content. And so, several rounds of different business engagements of different, like growing and being responsible for different businesses later. And I realized I'm always sort of like that kid in the classroom who just wants to hang out with the thought leader and learn more. And over the years, I think, probably at this point, the most impactful probably moment is for me when I was encouraged to realize and bring that vision to fruition by a colleague of mine who said, you need to stop emceeing these large leadership events and, building businesses around leadership and get out there and stand in your own knowing and learning and teaching. And I did that for the first time in 2012. And so it was 10 years ago. 11 years ago. And before then, I consider myself, really first and foremost, somebody in business. My business happens to be leadership development, but I was on the business side and have straddled both since, growing and leading businesses and the Institute for Inclusive Leadership is the latest. And I'm very, very honored to be at Simmons University in Boston and presiding over what is a legacy business, really. It's a brand new institute, but our business has been around for years and years. And I certainly stand on the shoulders of giants who brought to the world, things like the first MBA for women and the first business school for women and the first public leadership conference for women. It's just a really exciting place to be. And so to, author books along the way has been also an honor. So there's several points, but Robin, I'm sure this is true for you. I didn't along the way anticipate any of them. Like I didn't write the script of my future, right? I things came up along the way and I thought, yeah, I guess that makes sense right now, but I didn't know. Looking back, I see how it all threads together and how different people and different organizations and different products and different books and different, influences helped me every step of the way. I just didn't know it at the time in some of the cases.
Yes. Yes.
So
yeah, I love that about life and life's journey. It brings us to the places and we can have an opportunity to make the choices of the things that we resonate with. And then we look back and say, look how that worked out.
Yeah. I have to say, though, probably the most impactful conversation of not a lot of impactful conversations. One of the most impactful conversations was with a mentor and friend, Richard Leiter, who wrote not just, I think he's written like 11 books on purpose. He's sort of like the purpose guru. You probably know him or read him. And anyway, I was sitting down with Richard Leiter and we did his calling cards. And, we talked about, because we have the same number one calling card, which is to awaken spirit. And the minute I sort of let that be stepped into what I have known but was shy around, the universe started to conspire to help me show up in that way all over the place. And then I furthered the vision with an amazing question from a former boss of mine, Matt Norquist, who was the CEO of Linkage for a spell, who said, why are you here? What's your big, what's your big purpose? And out of my mouth came eradicating harshness. And I don't know where it came from. It felt like I was like, okay, so I'm supposed to awaken spirit for the purpose of eradicating harshness. And my life's work is really about that. My internal journey, my external journey, my books touch it. I think of it as the prerequisite to leading is you can't have inclusion and engagement if you're wrestling with harshness, either about yourself or about others. So that's sort of been the red thread. And it's powerful conversations that I've had with a number of people that help me become clear about that. And I'm still manifesting it in all sorts of interesting ways, which is also really fun. It's like, okay, what's next?
Yeah. And that's amazing that you've got that clarity, that you had that real clarity. And now that's the central point that weaves through the work that you do.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, you and your listening audience, like I'm a self-awareness junkie. Like I love to read books to better understand how I can step more fully into, my best self, living a life that has value and purpose. I've taken on the value of my journey like it's my job, and my learning along the way is what I share with others because I want everybody to take the value of their life and their journey seriously. Not seriously where it becomes burdensome, but this is not our dress rehearsal. It's not a rehearsal. This is our life.
That's
It's
right.
right now, happening right now.
Yeah, I resonate with that a lot because self-awareness is something that I continually seek and do and enjoy to do. So I really appreciate that. And the notion of you sharing your wisdom through those insights in all these various ways. Now, you mentioned the Institute for Inclusive Leadership. What does that mean? I mean, we can kind of infer, but tell us what it means in your thinking, inclusive leadership.
Yeah. So I think inclusive leadership is an oxymoron if you really want to know the truth. I think we've had to spell it out and make it explicit so that we can return to and maybe build on aspects of leadership and the known research and practices and competencies that have been long in every leadership model I've seen that buoy the acceptance and development and engagement of everyone. And so, inclusive leadership is about making sure everyone brings their unique strengths to the table and feels valued and welcomed so that we get all of that goodness and achieve even better, more impactful results. I think the word inclusive is needed in some right now in the zeitgeist of the moment around leadership because leadership is a social construct. It's a relationship with people. And because of all sorts of things, mainly technology, we are confronted with more difference than ever before. Different perspective, different identities, different ways of communicating, you name it, just difference. And it's a more complicated time for people to lead. And our aim is to include everybody, and very few leaders I find know how to go about that. So the Institute is about helping leaders of all identities create the mindsets and the skills necessary so everybody can come to the table and give their unique gifts. We specialize, focus, the legacy of Simmons is women. And as we work with women and work with allies and sponsors and supporters of gender equity, we're really developing the mindsets of everyone for a world where there is great inclusion for everyone. So
Yes.
It's not just a gendered conversation.
It is important. It's very important work. Now, tell us about your book, your recent book, your most recent book, Arrive and Thrive, 7 Impactful Practices for Women Navigating Leadership. Let's start with, tell us the main message of the book.
I think the main message of the book is that more and more, thankfully, women are arriving, not to the level that we, of course, see gender parity in leadership. And I think as we see more women arrive, it was really important to my co-authors and I that we start to see women thrive. Leadership's hard, I much prefer a day, an hour a week when I get to consult with companies about leadership and leading than actually leading. It's harder to lead than it is to talk and write about leadership. The book has 7 practices. This is from evidence-based and field research. My co-authors, Janet Foutty, who's the executive chair at Deloitte US, and Lynn Perry Wooten, who is a scholar and currently she's the president of Simmons University. We sort of got together and between us have, something like 85 years of experience leading in different ways and studying and working in leadership. And the 7 practices sort of came out of our first set of conversations. And then we interviewed about 25 sitting C-level executives, mostly women, but also men, and mostly CEOs, and pressure tested the 7 practices with them and with great response. And so Arrive and Thrive, the, 7 impactful practices was birthed April of 2022, just last April. We published the book, and we were delighted to hit bestseller, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, and Publishers Weekly bestseller, not soon after. So it's been quite the journey. And I'm excited that it's making an impact.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Because it is, it takes not just the work of getting a book out, but also there's a personal element in putting yourself and your thoughts out into the world in that way. So the congratulations is for that too.
Yeah, I have to say was my real first big book collaboration, and it's less a personal journey. My last book with McGraw-Hill publishing was Mastering Your Inner Critic and 7 Hurdles to Advancement. And it's like, that was my baby. Like I needed to get that out of my system. It was faster to write. It was easier to write for me. I had been doing the work, and I tell a lot of personal stories in that. Arrive and Thrive is also, I feel like I practiced every practice while, we wrote this book. And so it was personal in that regard. And I plunked in a couple of my favorite tools in it, but it wasn't as vulnerable a book to write as Mastering Your Inner Critic. But yeah, it's a vulnerable thing, writing a book, period, the end. It's a daunting thing.
It is. All right. So what's one of I know there's 7 impactful practices, but what's one that you can share with us today, or one of your favorites, or I don't know if there's such a thing as a favorite impact practice. But.
Well, it's funny that you say that, so once we had the practices, which are things for your listening audience, like embracing authenticity and, developing a healthy team environment, it's geared towards professional women and those of all identities who are at work and want to sort of wrestle with what does it mean to thrive. The order of the practices was an interesting conversation, and I maintained, and my co-authors agreed, that investing in your best self was the first practice. And how we define this is, who are you when you're at your best? And that means when you get to deploy your strengths and the things that light you up, and where your strengths and talents are called to be in service of others, and where you feel some vitality, and I think number one is, we need to know that about ourselves before we can embrace the other practices. And we need to know how to return to our best selves when life happens, because Robin, as we know, life happens and we get kicked out of our best selves, and we don't behave in ways that I would probably call our best. And so first, that came first, and that is what I spend most of my time talking about, is how do you discover who you are at your best? What does it look like if you find that the current role you're in, or the current amount of time you're spending, doesn't look like you at your best? And how do you get yourself back to a place where your inner well-being coach is driving the bus, not your inner critic,
Yes, I love that. Could you give us a hint? I'm sure it's more complex than this, but a hint about getting back into your best self.
Actually, you know what? I love making things simple. There's so many busy, good people in the world who just don't know how to do this, and who just want the Cliff Notes you know what I mean? Like the short version. So there's actually a very simple practice. It's the best self return, otherwise known as the best self centering practice. And there's 4 steps. I've written about these 4 steps in probably 15 different ways. So whatever language, resonates. But step 1 is noticing, right? So we have to figure out what's up. And the fact that something's up in the first place, right, inside of ourselves, before ideally we do or say anything that causes harm or discomfort for others. Then we got to push pause and figure out, like, okay, we got to breathe. So that's step 2 is figuring out a way to come back to at least some level of center. The 3rd and 4th steps are a combination of appreciation and exploration. And depending upon what trips you up, you might want to pull one of them over the other. So if something happens and you become annoyed with somebody else, it's going to be really hard to get all appreciative and kind and compassionate. It might be more prudent to start with curiosity, like, whoa, why am I triggered right now? What about this conversation upsets me? What isn't working for me in this situation? Whereas if, if I make a mistake or find myself that I said or something, did something that I feel, embarrassed about, or something happened that's about me, it might be more prudent for me to say, whoa, girl, like, calm down. You're okay. It's okay. You did your best. Right. So that's assuring, appreciative, kind, compassionate love towards me. Sometimes it's hard. It's hard to do all of this. It's not easy, but there is a way that we can have a destination back. I think one of the differences between my first book and this latest book is I think I did a pretty good job spelling out the problem, and what the inner critic looks like and how it wreaks havoc. This latest book and the start of it, Arrive and Thrive Best Self, is all about our destination. So what's our aim here? From where do we want to live and lead our lives? And I think we need to spend more time on the destination, and so that it's attractive enough to break through all the things that get in the way,
Yes, yes.
So we can get back there. I'm calling everybody needs to Velcro to their best self.
I love that. And that's, that was a whole treasure chest right there of insight that you just brought to us. So thank you for sharing that. Now, I know you talked about the inner critic and in the other book, and this one, the first one with the best self. Is there a part of you reflected in either of these, or a combination of these books, the two that we've talked about so far? Is there a part of you reflected?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. A lot of parts of me are reflected. For those who are familiar with the Enneagram, I'm a 3. So I'm achievement oriented, and I've always been sort of tenacious. And, the shadow side of that is that I can be unconscious and cause all sorts of disruption for others in a way that doesn't land as well. So I've had to clean that up, and I'm still a work in progress, but managing my energy and my enthusiasm, even though it feels usually good to me, and I just, let's go, let's go, let's go. It doesn't always land for others in that way. So there's that. But I think the reflection of me in the book ranges from my own grandiosity to my own shame, and how I return to a place of I'm okay and you're okay, and full respect. I tend to be confident and not always courageous, and there's a difference. And so I think some of that nuance is in there as well. Readers wouldn't know it, but I'll share this with you, Robin, that when my co-authors insisted that resilience needs to be a chapter in its own practice, I thought, really? Do we really need to talk about resilience? Because look, if you wake up woman, you know resilience. If you wake up woman of color, you definitely know resilience. But like, do we really need to spell this out? And the gift of that. So I was a reluctant resilience talker. And what I realized was, first of all, how resilient I am, which I never was giving myself credit for, and how important it is to talk about our stories of resilience and our story and our setbacks, and what is true throughout all the practices. And probably sort of my biggest takeaway that became super clear during producing this work was, we do not stay in a fixed place at all in our maturation as adults. I knew that we were always growing, but things like authenticity, like, isn't that you discover your authentic self, and then you play with it, but who you are at the core is who you are at the core. It turns out the research actually shows that's not true. How we think of ourselves as authentic changes over time. What we value changes over time. Who knew? How we have a relationship with fear changes over time. Of course it does, right? So we're constantly growing and learning, and our setbacks, we sort of catapult forward to a place that is a different place, a more knowing place than before our setback, right? That's probably the grace of resilience. So there are parts of me explicitly and implicitly in so many of the practices, and in all of the books I've written,
Yes, yes. That's amazing. I mean, I'm just imagining now people saying, oh, wow, I want to hear so much more about all of these books, but particularly these impact practices. All right. So now, this podcast is Leadership Purpose. So now let's think about purpose for a moment. Do you think the idea of having purpose, or at least a sense of purpose in your work, is important? And if so, why? And if not, why not?
So I do. think that purpose is important. I think you probably could have guessed that. I think purpose is important because I think we all need to feel like we're doing something meaningful and of value. So if you, in my executive coaching practice and in some of my advisory work, what I found is if you dig beneath the surface of somebody who's not engaged, it boils down to usually they don't feel valued, or whatever they're doing that's work isn't connected with something that lights them up. So when I think about purpose, I really just think about being lit up, about something you care about, something you feel called to connect with. And so I think our energy is so, so important. And so if we're looking for, having energy because it feels good, I think a path to that is purpose. And look, we spend the most time that we've got in our life, whether you love your job or think of it as a career or not, at work. And so I think it's pretty darn important that at least some of our time we're connected to what we feel, what we care about, what we feel some purpose around.
Yes, what we care about. Yeah. And of course, I resonate with that deeply. Now, is there anything that I didn't ask you that you want to share before we tell people how they can reach you? I mean, you gave us such wonderful insights. I can't even imagine that you would have something more, but if you do, we would appreciate it. If not, it's okay.
It's so good. So just yesterday, I saw a quote by actually Warren Bennis's daughter, and all it said was declare what you want. Or something like that. It was like declare what you want or declare what you're up for or something, but we have to declare. And I think the only thing I would share is, talk about a work in progress. My best self is when I am sharing this work. And I did lots and lots of speaking engagements on Mastering Your Inner Critic. And I'm just getting out again for doing inspiring keynotes on returning to your best self in a stressed out, frenzied world, right? And so what I would just share is I'm sort of declaring I'm back on the speaker circuit, and it's so hard to just say, yes, this is what I love and this is what I want to do, but I'm going to start with you because it looks like it's just us, even though some people, are going to listen to this. I am excited to do more speaking. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. And I'm sure people are eager to hear you, especially those who heard you or read your work already, because you have a lot to offer. And you're doing so many important things. I appreciate you for taking time and being generous with your thoughts and your time and your energy here with us today. So thank you. Appreciate you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I love talking to you, and you're such a beautiful listener.
I enjoy talking with you too. Now, where can people who say, oh, how can I reach her? I want more. How can they be in touch with you?
So SusanMBrady.com just launched, and the Institute for Inclusive Leadership and all that we do can be found at inclusiveleadership.com.
Wonderful. And I'll make sure we put those in the show notes. Okay, everyone, if you want to reach me, you can contact me on social media, mostly on LinkedIn, Robin L. Owens, PhD, Robin L. Owens, PhD, but I'm on the other social media sites too. And if you happen to be an author who has a book and you want to amplify your message beyond your book and you're thinking about creating a course, head on over to my free training at createmasterfulcourses.com. createmasterfulcourses.com. There you can learn how to turn your book into a masterful course. And until next time, this is Dr. Robin. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Leadership Purpose with Dr. Robin podcast. If you enjoyed it, head on over and rate and subscribe so you never miss an episode. New episodes drop every week, and I can't wait to hang out with you again soon. Meanwhile, this is Dr. Robin signing off. See you next time.